horses that are obviously going to run the distance and have a bit of a turn of foot, preferably. Horses that don't look like they're going to give away too big a start without a turn of foot, and you know, trying to identify horses that are obviously in the best of form and ready to go. I do take on board things like not coming into this race without a local run and things like that. It's just much better to see how they're going and understand, you know, what they're capable of as much as anything. There's a few horses here that I've entertaining that are coming into the race pretty fresh, but most have had a run here, so we'll get stuck into it. Number 1, Hartnell. I'll go down the page, probably the easiest way to go. Sorry, just got an email at the same time. Hartnell, very difficult to work out the plan behind this horse, this preparation. It obviously resumed over the 1401 there, as usual. Went to the mile group 1 and was beaten by Humidor, who was pretty dominant late against it. Then came out in a bit of a controversial race over the 1800, ridden back, and Bonneval was too good for it there. Then last time it was a bit of a forgive run out to the 2,000 metres. This is sort of him back here. He looked to be travelling okay here, a $4.50 chance basically. Obviously, Johannes Vermeer is coming off his back and he's the most interesting runner to come out of this race for mine. But just isolating Hartnell at the moment, he doesn't look to be. He looks a bit one-paced, and definitely a forgive effort. You see, like you can't cop much more interference than that. Lost all his momentum, and he definitely finishes closer, but he doesn't do what Johannes Vermeer did. He finishes sort of 2 or 3 lengths closer. He definitely, obviously, he ran 3rd in this race last year when presenting as the winner on the turn. After having a really nice run in transit, this is him here midfield. Pops out, and this is our man and coming wider in the red cap, but again travelling up nicely. Hard on the bridle here, and it's just the superior stayers that get past him when he's put under pressure here and just put him away. So I don't see him running the trip strongly. I don't think he is a 2-mile horse. Very concerned about his preparation and just have to risk him. I agree that he's certainly one of the class runners of the race. I expect him to still beat more home than beat him home, simply on class alone, but just can't. I think he has to be at his best to win this race. He's got to give them all weight, and at this trip I think he needs to be absolutely airborne, and he doesn't look to be going as well as he was last year into this race, so just leaving him out at this time. Obviously just saw Dalmanden there. This was his lead-up run coming into last year, so over 2,500 metres. Pretty softish tempo here. Dalmanden coming up the inside here. His ability to pick up horses while still travelling on the bridle and then show a turn of foot is really his strongest attribute. And then he has gears like, see, it was a pretty soft win there. And then I've just seen the cup again. I probably should have covered him a bit more. So he settled quite a long way back. This is him here, back on the fence, picking horses off us we're talking about. So just travelling in behind here with the eventual second place get a Heartbreak City. He travels really strongly. Hasn't had to move on him yet. When he does, he shows his turn of foot. And he's able to sustain that. You can still see that he's building through his gears. You can see the margins opening up behind. These are sort of all holding each other, and these two are racing away. You know, it's a short margin, but he's still quite dominant, and he's dominant over the rest. There's no Heartbreak City in this race this year. As we were sort of talking about, Hartnell was flying this time last year. I don't think this year is any stronger than that. and I think we'll show his. So this was his first up run this time in. So he's 3 wide, no cover here off a really quick tempo. They ran extremely fast time. It's not easy to do this, especially first up. So he takes the front. He carried 61 kilos here this day. As you said, this was first up for nearly a year, 298 days off between runs here. And even though he's quite soft on him late, he's still strong in the line, just showing what a strong stayer he is. He then went to the 2500. He's back here on the fence. They ran even faster, about 12 lengths quick to the turn, to the 600. And here he is back here in the white cap. Restricted room. So again, he's just a bomb-proof horse where he can just travel and get himself out of trouble with his turn of foot. Obviously flattered by the tempo, but look at what the rest of them are doing, and he's not even touched him. Like he's got more up his sleeve. That's as impressive as a win as you'll see over that sort of distance. Carried 61 kilos again. Obviously it was only a listed race, but still, you know, they were pretty promising horses, and that was his second run back after 300 days off, over 2500. He then came out in a day where I thought it was a big advantage to be on the inside here. I don't know whether this race carried possible penalties, but he was a short price favourite, and there was just a smell about this race that he may not have been prepared. Certainly as a grand final, it was just a ticking over run to have him ready for the Cup. Eventual winner here, Emily Star, which we'll talk about later. Here he is here, exposed nice and early, widest. Again, travels like he does, but just looked like he was a little bit underdone here. He was 3 weeks between runs, and it just looks like they've looked after him a bit. He had the pattern against. The time was good again, and his effort was okay. But I'm just treating it as a barrier trial. I don't think he's overly vigorous here, and he certainly doesn't drop out or do anything crazy. He's just there, and if you treat that as a barrier trial, this horse is absolutely flying. He's won 4 of his last 6. His effort first up was huge. Forgiving that last one, he should have probably won 5 of his last 6. He's carries 56.5 kilos here, which is about 4 kilos more than he carried last year, I believe. 4.5 kilos. Frankie Dettori, he's not won this race before, but he's won just about every other race in the world. I'm not worried about him, even though he's got a bit of a poo-poo about him here when he comes to Australia. But he's a top-class rider. There's no worry with him whatsoever. At $10.50, I've definitely got him top pick again, and $10.50 looks well and truly a value for me in an open race, obviously. Humidor's another interesting horse. There are quite a few interesting. I'll try and skip through the ones I'm not that interested in a bit more, but this horse has to be touched upon simply because of where he comes from. His recent form's obviously good, very similar to what Hartnell came in with last year. The only difference with Hartnell, he had been proven over this sort of trip before, even though he's a bit of a tough going thing. So this preparation, he resumed 1400, went through the motions over 2 14s, built into a 16, and was dominant over Hartnell, Blackheart Bart, over the mile. Not even bothered watching that as a mile's a bit short to even worry about. He came out and he was a little bit flat behind Winks over the 2000 at the weight for age, step weight penalties. Dropped back to went to the 2400 at Caulfield, and we'll show this run. The important part's probably the start, where he's bustled into a position early, and you can see he's going quite keen. He's then exposed. He's the first exposed without cover horse. He's then still right there, getting knocked off his balance a little bit there, which wouldn't have helped him, and he wants to lay in under pressure, but he's right there and solid to the line. Like, his efforts is definitely, apart from that sort of inside being the best place to be, his efforts as good as any in the Cup. There's no doubt about that. the winner down there. We'll talk about Marmello in a second. But then he came out in the Cox Plate 7 days later, dropped back in trip. He's put to sleep on the fence back here. Here he is, travelling strongly. They threw the blinkers on him. And he's just probably a little bit one-paced, whereas Winks always has that turn of foot. And was just able to hold him off late. You see then he still wants to lay in a little bit under pressure, but she's a strong horse. So he drops in weight. That he obviously carried the 59 there, drops to 55.5, 56. The more I look at him, the more I want to throw him in a little bit closer to the top than what I have. Actually, he's got the right rider. He's riding well. He'll ride a patient race. They've left the blinkers on, which is quite interesting. They obviously think there's no issue with the distance. That's my only query with him, that he runs out a strong 2 mile, but apart from that, he's got the best of weight for age form. He's got really nice miles under his legs. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th run into the prep. He's in the right stable. He's drawn okay. He's got a lot of ticks, but he just has to tick that 3,200 metre box, and considering he's nearly the same price as our Mandan, who does tick that box, probably you've got to be swaying that way. But definitely, I think I marked him $21 early. I think I might have been a bit aggressive there, and might trim him up a little bit, but still. He has to run that trip out, and he's probably had his 2 grand finals already. Tiberian's the first of the Raiders we cover. Interesting form it's got. It's only 17 starts, 6 wins. It's not won past. It's won at 3,000 metres, so that ticks that box for me. I think they've only got to win past 2,400 for me in the UK to really think that the 3,200 won't be an issue, especially with they don't bring them out here for nothing usually. Tiberian's won 4 of its last 5 starts. Its only defeat was in the St. Cloud in France in the Group 1. Oliver Peslier's been riding this horse all its way through. He's come out here a week early. He doesn't do that for nothing. We'll just have a look at its replays. So what the interesting thing here, so it's led here. I'm not going to show the full replay. It's led at a really slow tempo. You can see that they're all stacked up behind. He sort of pinches that length at the top of the straight, never really gets away from them. My issue with this horse is simply that I don't think he has the turn of foot probably necessary to hold off quite a few good horses here, but I do think that he is a horse that needed to draw a gate to hold the position to be able to be right there on the turn and fight them off. So that was his win leading 2 starts ago. This is his win last start. Again, I won't bother showing. He sort of lobs into a position here. He ends up 4th, 1 out in a perfect position. They don't do a lot for most of the race. Here he is 4th. Don't really get serious. Still turning for home here. So this is where he's had every conceivable chance again. He's within a length of the lead. He never really shows a great turn of foot. He has a little sprint, and then he can maintain that. And I think this horse down the outside, you see where everyone's kind of spruiking. This is the horse that won at the Breeders' Cup yesterday. I can't think of his name. Talismanic. And he was quite impressive yesterday, well ridden. Does have a turn of foot. So it shows to me that they've really gone slow here, and if this horse can't make any ground, they must be all pretty sprinting home at the same sort of pace. So he's just held on. He's obviously got a bit of strength about him, and you see there when the jockey switches him off, he holds that sort of momentum to the line, which again to me says he's a one-paced animal that can be dangerous if he races near the lead. I don't want to see him coming from well back and trying to run them down. I wouldn't imagine. There's no real nothing to say that he can't do that, but he definitely looks to be far better suited up on the speed. He's been in field sizes of 5, 7, 10, 7, 7 his last 5 starts. He now goes to a 24 horse field. There's a few things against this horse for mine. Gate 23 is the issue. Not being able to sort of hold that spot without doing some work early. It's going to take a great ride. I think they do have to chance their arm a little bit and push forward early. The speed of the race is a little bit up for grabs, as in there's not super duper speed on paper, but you do have a few drawn wide here. Montaigne probably rolls forward, Galante with him, and then you've got a lot of horses with decisions that don't really want to lead, but would like to find on-pace positions. Probably Boom Time, Emily Star, Single Gauge, try and just head left and try and get as close to the rail as possible. The ones outside are the ones likely to push on. Your horses like Marmello, Montaigne, Galante definitely, Thomas Hobson is certainly a chance of doing that, and even US Army Range is a big chance of doing that. Tiberian's drawn in no man's land, and really that's probably my biggest issue with him individually. But I'm throwing him for the places, sorry. The bottom places. Definitely risking for the win. Marmello, the Spruik horse from the Caulfield Cup. His form before that is quite interesting. I'll show you a couple of replays before we look at the Caulfield replay. We'll just watch the Caulfield replay first, because it's here. Obviously great to see that he's had a run. He was 62 days between runs before this. He's importantly, she sort of misses the kick a little bit. Here he is here, and eases to the fence. He's back well on the fence here, coming to this point of the race. I'm treating this as a complete barrier trial, third last defence here. Sort of gets checked off heels there when Wall and Fire runs up the back of them. Sorry, Wicklow Brave runs up the back of them. Here he gets to the outside here. It was obviously very difficult to run on wide. I've got a few things that are sort of hurting here. You see the pace has helped. They've gone at cracking tempo. This horse, Abbey Marie, is probably a better run. Got Humidor up on the speed, who's a similar run. But it's done similar effort. So we've done a lot more work up on the speed. He's in a better part of the track. Johannes Vermeer's coming up in behind them. It's done even less work in the run. But the important part is the way Marmello closes off that last part. He's not a sit sprint type. Here he is here, trying to work out sort of what he's given away. He is trying to lay into. Once he finally drags him to the outside and straightens, he does his best work late. Traditionally, it's always like he's only just nutted Humidor on the line, who's done a lot more work in the run, raced far more prominently. So the only way I can get this horse really hard in the race is if you treat this as a barrier trial. Nearly happy to do that because it looks like it was their intent from the start, going back and running home. Sorry, we'll go here. His previous efforts. This is his run 2 starts ago. So 3 starts ago when he ran second to Talismanic. So Talismanic's the one here. Marmello's on his back. What I want to display here is his lack of turn of foot, basically. Sorry, so Talismanic's even come from further back, has it? Or is it the one in front of it? Pardon me. No, it is the one in front of it. No, it's the one down there. So, really well organised here. It is the one in front of it. So he's trailed the winner through, and the winner's left him for dead. This horse does have a good turn of speed, which was evident yesterday in the Breeders' Cup. He doesn't. Like you can see, he's got a little burst, but he just keeps building and building and building. He's a momentum builder. So for me, he's another one who just really needs everything to go his way in order to continually be able to build up his revs, get through his gears. The distance is going to be no issue, but his turn of speed is definitely going to be an issue for mine, as in it stops him from being bomb-proof. He may struggle to get out of trouble if he starts to lay in or if he's held up at all in running. and you'll see there his stamina's no issue. He's still surging to the line. I'll get rid of that so I don't actually have to worry about looking at it again. His previous run to that, his last run's the pre-Kergolay. Just here, and this time, interesting just to watch the start. So he's not really got any gate speed, but he's kind of left there and takes quite a long time to work his way to that forward position. Ends up with a manly uncontested lead and is able to... Oops. Not going to help anyone. So the other horse to look at here is Red Cardinal down the outside. They've absolutely walked here. He's able to build up the pressure nice and early. And as again we'll see, it's hard for any horse to sprint off this sort of tempo. A staying horse. A few horses flattened by this bloke. But he's at his top nice and early in the straight, and he never really gets away from them, but again he sustains that run. Red Cardinal's just completely tempo affected and can't get near the leader, but he is strong through the line once again. So his ability is his strength. It's definitely not his turn of foot. He's drawn to need a bit of luck. I think if his mind presses forward, he's the one who I want to see joining in on the turn to be winning. I don't want to see him coming with a horse like Almandon or Rekindling or Johannes Vermeer, because I think he may get out sprinted, but if he's off and gone, he could be a nightmare to run down. So definitely a winning chance. Needs a great ride from Bowman. If they jag him at the start, I think he's a risk. If they sort of gamble their hand a bit and try and push forward to the first 5 or 6 to make sure that they can be in front of a few of their rivals, I see him as a major player, but just lacks that turn of foot. Red Cardinal, we've half covered there. I thought his form, I'll watch his replay in America 2 starts ago. So this is the Belmont International Cup. Don't have to watch too much. They sent out a pace setter here. So this is Red Cardinal back 4th, 5th last. He gets going 3 wide. Just a perfect race shape for him. Gets a toe into the race. Wall of Fire, obviously. Interesting horse, was left in front a long way out, sat outside a fast tempo, chased a fast tempo. Red Cardinal has done no work, had a drag everywhere into the race, came to the outside. He does have a little bit of a turn of foot, as we'll see there. He sort of lets down and then holds them off quite well. When the horse comes up to him and challenges him, he definitely looks to lift, and he's got some solid form about him. His next run after this was the Kergolay race behind Marmello. He carried 60 kilos there. He drops to 55 kilos. Marmello carried 59 kilos there and drops a similar weight to 55. So he meets him marginally better at the weights. He's got Karen McAvoy, which I think he's the best staying jockey in the world just about at the moment. I think he's incredibly patient. My issue is he's going to have to pretty much jag this horse out at the start, and he's going to have to circle the field. I don't think he's got enough on them to do that. I think he's been beaten comfortably by Marmello a couple of times. He's got form around Marmello Talismanic, which is obviously solid. It's just he beat Marmello. Marmello's beaten him. He's got form. That's just the one run. Looking at the wrong person there. I was confusing myself into thinking his form was a bit better than it was. He's a horse that I think faces a huge task simply from the barrier as well. He had to draw soft to give himself the best chance, maybe sneak inside runs, which McAvoy's really good at doing. He really needed to be fast run, bunch, and come with a really well-timed run from Karen McAvoy, I think, to be winning. I'm not saying he can't win by any stretch. He's got a lot of ticks in the boxes. He arrives here 79 days between runs, which is not ideal for a horse that needs a bit of help as well. So I'm risking him. Johannes Vermeer, I'm pretty much not even looking at any of his form before he got here. He'd never won past 2,000 metres before he got here. Still hasn't, actually, which is a bit of a worry. Obviously, his biggest worry. I can't get this run out of my head. His first run back in Australia, obviously it was over 2,000 metres. He was ridden well back. They did only run an even tempo here, and it was extremely hard to run on and extremely hard to run on wide. So he's here in the white cap. Saw this run with Hartnell. His turn of foot, he's quite exceptional. Galo Chop was still, building momentum here and ran home in good time in the right part of the track. And this horse, he's doing something in the race that no one else was doing. He obviously started favourite, or close enough to it, in a Caulfield Cup. He ran right through the line there. He again drew inside, ends up back in the middle here. Just kind of watch him here. When his stablemate comes back through the field, this is Johannes Vermeer trying to sneak inside runs, which again was the best part of the track to be on. His momentum gets held up by his stablemate there, and he's forced to check in between runners. He then has to switch again. To me, he's not a Caulfield horse. Obviously, he's run well there twice now, but I'm excited to see him get to Flemington. He definitely wasn't stopping through the line there. He does have to get the extra trip, but I do think this gate 3 is the making of this horse. He can be put to sleep. He can pick off runners travelling on the bit and really can show a dynamic turn of foot when exposed. He's one I'd be holding up for as long as possible and then letting him rip. But he's the question mark horse from the distance perspective. If he gets it, he's got the turn of foot to match his stablemate Almandon and Rekindling, which we haven't got to. He's an exciting horse. He could be 12 months away. He might not run the trip, but you must put him in. $10 is an interesting price because he's probably a $4 or $5 chance or a 25, 30 to 1 chance. So $11 is probably fair enough. Not a horse that I'd be looking to unload on, that's for sure, but certainly looks right in this race if he runs the distance. Aidan O'Brien, one of the best trainers in the world, wouldn't be sending him if he didn't, even if Lloyd does own and does love to have his runners go around in this race. Stablemate Bondi Beach, I bet up on this horse last year, didn't really do a lot, was beaten 11 lengths. His run since have been a bit lacklustre. He was obviously gelded in the meantime, had excuses on both occasions. Shows up here with the blinkers on, third up off 2 runs beaten, 6 in quality and 10 or 11 in a listed race. I could throw him in for 3rd and 4th just in case from the inside gate because he does have the ability. He did display great ability early in his career, especially his 3-year-old season. Form around the likes of Order of St George, beating Order of St George in a Group 3 and then narrowly beaten at Group 1 level on a couple of occasions. This is his 3rd crack at the Melbourne Cup and just have to leave him out for mine. Max Dynamite, interesting horse that ran in this race 2 years ago, obviously was the horse that knocked over half the field. Head right to the business part of it, probably the ugliest Melbourne Cup of all time, and not really a great form reference for mine. You'll see him try and work to the outside here in a second. Here he comes. He does a right hand turn here and knocks half the field over in a second. Boom, here he is. Gets to the outside of the eventual winner, Pirates of Penzance. Richard Penzance. And chases hard. He does have a turn of foot. He's a hurdler. I really got great respect for the trainer, who's a old punting sort of trainer who loves to set his horses for targets, and this is Willie Mullins I'm talking of, and he obviously has had issues since this run. He had 205 days off, hadn't won again and then he had 413 days off, so important to note this was 2 years ago that Melbourne Cup run was. He then took him to a really dodgy little 3,400 metre open race last start, and he was a soft winner. No sort of chance of a penalty there. He's just trying to get the horse back on track. I love that he's got Zach Purton for the ride, 54 kilos. You don't see Zach Purton ride at 54 very often. That's a positive and a negative. A positive that he's going to do it, a negative that he's got a ways to get to that sort of weight. He's got a great turn of foot. He drew the gate that he needed to draw. He can race in the first half of the field. He ticks a lot of boxes to be a place chance at absolute worst. I think $15 at the bottom of his range. His depth of form is not super, and that race was very ugly. If you use that as your only form reference, it's pretty tough, but he doesn't look to be coming in here in the same sort of form that he was in coming into 15, and again, the trainer's so smart that it's hard to say that he's not. He was dominant in that last win to show that he is back on track to a certain degree, but whether or not he's at his peak or not, we'll find out on Tuesday. I'm definitely throwing him for placings, but not with any confidence from a winning perspective. Ventura Storm's one horse that I do want to be forgiving of. I thought his runs have been quite good this preparation. Only beaten 3 lengths first up in a 1700 metre listed race, dropped back to the mile, which wasn't suitable, and made late ground against Humidor, Hartnell, Blackheart, Bart. Have a quick look at that because it's last section. It was held up in behind here, and when they're all building momentum, it wasn't allowed to. Complete forgive. Came out and did find the right part against Winks, but I thought didn't have everything go its way. Was forced to do a bit of chasing, held up here in between the two Williams runners, which was not ideal. Got the gap, found nicely, and just completely outsprinted by Winks, which is acceptable. Humidor chasing hard in from behind. It was tough to run on here, so his effort was similar. But as you can see, there's not much difference between them, strength on the line. And this horse then had an abscess issue, I believe, heading into the Caulfield Cup. Forgivable run. It was in close enough to the speed, and definitely didn't finish off back here. But not disgraceful, not weak. And if you tack on plenty of improvement, if there was a foot issue, which there's no worse issue than a foot issue for mine, and a no more forgiving thing than an issue with a foot for mine. This horse can improve, and he's $34 and one of my better roughies in the race. I did have good Group 1 European form, mainly sort of Group 3, Group 1 in Italy before coming to Australia. Wicklow Brave's another one of my biggest roughy sort of horses here. I won't watch all the replays because I'll cover most of them with rekindling, but has form around or won a hurdle in April, and then beaten 2.5 by Red Cardinal in that race at Belmont Park. He's had plenty of racing since, just narrowly beaten by Wicklow Brave. As I'll show the replay later, rekindling was a bit unlucky there and certainly dominant. Then again, strong. Was beaten 8 lengths behind Stradivarius Big Orange. That is good form for this race, Desert Skyline. Beaten 8 lengths again by Order of St George, 14 lengths by Order of St George in the Group 1 St Ledger, and then came out and thought was a forgive run. I'm not saying, there's horses with stronger form, like when you look at a horse like Rekindling, it's very hard to see how this horse can beat it, but it's more of a value perspective. Here it is here, held up on the back of Johannes Vermeer, totally knocked over, basically lost all momentum, and from that position it's very hard. Again, ran up their backsides and whacked away on the fence. I just think this horse is a serious improver. It's hard fit, got plenty of form, had a run here, got run around, it's got form around, like it has beaten Order of St George at Group 1 level before it came to this preparation. So Wicklow Brave certainly has the ability, needs things to go its way, draws ideally, can race handier than a lot of them, ticks a lot of boxes at $71 if you forgive a few little things in its form. And obviously it's carried 60-61 against some good horses, 62 against Rekindling, and now drops down to 54 kilos here. So it's well in at the weights as well, and well worth forgiving. I could have something small on at the win, but definitely throwing it in exotics. Big Duke's obviously more known as a local horse, has been here for quite a while. He's won 7 races, 6 of them I believe for, or 5 of them for Darren Weir, 6 of them for Darren Weir. Has Group 1 form over the 2 miles in Australia. The depth of that, it is Group 1 level, but the depth of that is an issue. We're talking polarisation, who shot the bum, and Big Duke in the Sydney Cup earlier in the year. Came out and was a good second, again at Group 1 level over 2400. That Sydney forms just doesn't seem to stack up too well year in, year out at this level, and the horses all around it seem to be a bit weaker than what we see here. I do think he's a very honest horse. I do think he'll run the trip out, and he's obviously well weighted. He's another one that probably goes into the bottom end of exotics, but definitely not a horse that I can either back or entertain as a winning chance here. I just think the depth to his form's not there. US Army Ranger is a former star 3-year-old that really just hasn't come back as well. His form we're talking to Highland Reel, 4 starts back, 10 lengths, beaten 3 lengths in a huge, when dropping hugely in grade over 4,400 metres. He whacked away, stepped back up to Group 1 level, and beaten 11 again. Then last start beaten 8. I can't see him I can't entertain him as a winning chance here. He's drawn terribly. I'm not really sure what to make of him, but I am risking him. Boom Time's been a bit of a revelation of late. I've had a really good look at this horse because he just looks a bit of a forgotten type. He's winner of 7 races from 32. He's definitely in career best form. There's absolutely no knock on any of his runs this preparation, really. He raced a bit close at Moonee Valley, the only time he was beaten 5. Then he came out and chased a slow tempo at Moonee Valley behind John Snow. Then he sat up on a fast tempo, even though he did sort of have cover behind Lord Fandango, but battled away well. Found the right spot in the Caulfield Cup, absolutely no doubt about that. He had to be sort of just in behind the speed there, had cover. Did have to work to get out and was strong to the line, strong through the line. The $1 million question is how strong is that Caulfield Cup form? The time looks okay. He obviously had his chance there and remains down in the weights, 53 kilos here. Does he run the distance? He's only had 1 shot at it and led on a heavy 10 and dropped out and was spelled immediately in the Sydney Cup. He was in the betting there, $14. It's hard to knock him too much at $31. He looks like it's about a fair enough price, and it's similar to what I've basically marked him. He's a horse that could... I wouldn't be surprised if he bobbed up, but he's a horse that I'd probably... If you had told me a month ago, I would have been very surprised. So, for me, he's one I'm probably leaving out, but wouldn't be surprised if he's still there doing his best very late. Galante, Sydney Cup winner 2 years ago, hasn't really done a heck of a lot since. Resumed from a long break and wasn't a bad effort when second throughout. After that, this is last year we're talking about. Beaten 14 lengths, 22 lengths, 18 lengths, and then 4 lengths at its latest start in Group 3 company when really not looking like doing a lot, and every chance. Looks a horse that'll probably press forward from the wide gate, and one that I just cannot entertain and think he'll be one of the ones struggling from the turn. Librand number 17 has very similar form to Big Duke, but probably a couple of lengths shy of his form. Every chance the other day when Who Shot the Barman beat him home, he really had his chance to swoop down the outside there when it became a bit of a swooping event. Just by them packing up before the turn and a few other runners being held up. His form early in the prep was good. His 2,000 metre win was good. I thought he was a leading chance in the Metropolitan, but he had his chance there and really did not enough. Have to risk this horse. Akita's an interesting horse. Its form's really solid. 7-year-old gelding come over here from the Jardine yard. 31 starts, 5 wins, 8 seconds, 3 thirds. Obviously a very consistent type, placing on more than half of its occasions. Hard to line up his actual form though. It's quite. He's never really reached the heights of a lot of these horses, but he's not been tested at them. His last win was obviously in the Ebor handicap, which can be a good guide to this race usually, but he was extremely well ridden. It didn't look like a vintage Ebor. They did put a bit of a gap on the third horses. He's not a horse that I can really entertain. He's won up to 2,800, which is okay. He's got distance form around here when he's run second at his only attempt. It's a horse that I just really couldn't imagine being up to these class-wise. He'll run an honest race. He's a horse that I wanted to see probably draw a soft gate to really entertain him as a trifecta player. Single Gaze from the Nick Olive yard. What a horse it's been now. Winner of $2 million plus in prize money. And second in the Caulfield Cup last start, chasing the tearaway leader and holding off all but one runner. Its efforts, all preparation, have been full of merit. It's been set a task at most of those runs and just keeps on doing her absolute best. She's drawn to get the perfect trail. She's never been tested at anything near 3,200 metres or at this level. She carries the same weight she carried in the Group 1 Caulfield Cup when running second. And she goes around here at 60s. Can't knock it at the price. Absolutely no knock it. If you want to back it at that price, it definitely can't put you off it. But if she wins if she wins this race, it's going to be a heck of an effort. She's a horse that placed as 2-year-olds in major races, and now here she is as a 5-year-old mare running in a Melbourne Cup. Good luck to connections, and she does look to get the right run. It's just a matter of whether she runs it out strongly. Wall of Fire's a very interesting runner. Sorry, just has been seen here recently. I'll show you its last 2 runs, which are both quite promising. Had no luck in that Belmont Park run when racing up on a quick tempo behind Red Cardinal. If we're forgiving of that, and its depth, it has real no depth to its form before that. The Group 3 2 starts ago. Is this it? So this is behind Defoe. Wall of Fire's back here last. Back last. Back last pulls to the outside, so Defoe, the winner's here. This is Wall of Fire, who looks to be sprinting quite well, looks to actually show a turn of foot. And Defoe cuts him off. And then he's forced to change tact, and Defoe's a pretty classy type. This is a few levels lower than other horses we're talking about, but he does continually find the line. The margins are opening behind, and I don't want to be too negative of that. Performance at all. Sorry, I just lost track of where the replay I was looking for. So it's then come out in the Caulfield Cup off the back of that. Sorry, not the Caulfield Cup, the Herbert Power, and ridden stone cold again. Obviously another day where it was tough to run on, but they did go extremely quickly in this race. This horse, Wall of Fire, was dragged out the back. Here he is here. he's forced to sort of run wide and build his revs here. He comes down the outside here. Again, the issue is, if you're treating this as a barrier trial, it's a great barrier trial. Gallic Chieftain, he's not a horse that I want to be backing in a Melbourne Cup. But then we've got Boom Time, who's come out and won, Melbourne Cup, and then we've got Boom Time, who's come out and won a Melbourne Cup out of this, and Lord Fandango, who's come out and run really well following this also. So if you treat it as a barrier trial, it's a great barrier trial. If you're testing it as a class perspective, it's difficult. Merit in the run, they certainly ran good time. It was difficult to run on wide this day, so he's ticked by both those boxes, but he was pace assisted. And has he got talent? There's no doubt about it. Where does he get to in the run? Probably goes back of midfield from the middling gate. He looks to race better when he settles off. He does have a bit of a turn of speed and does tick a lot of boxes. Gets the visors on and the blinkers off. I think he's well found around the $13 mark, but he's one that probably goes in for minor placings in trifectas, risking him for the win simply on a class perspective. Thomas Hobson's looks to be a little bit overspruiked for mine. Drawn gate 21 here. Joe Moreira comes to ride. Gate 17. Desert Skyline, which we talked about, it's not bad form for this, but it was the only really interesting form line I could find. He's a strong winner over the hurdles. I like it, hurdlers that have a turn of foot. This horse doesn't have a turn of foot for mine. He's the one that I really don't want to entertain too much as a strong winning hope, and I'll be letting him go around for mine. From that gate, I think he's going to have to do too much work. And if you want to put him in, he's your third and fourth man as well. I can't have him as a top two horse. Rekindling's probably the horse I'm most interested in this race. I love that he's up and running as a 2-year-old. He's come back as a 3-year-old and run in some really good races there. Beaten a long way by Wings of Eagle, and was probably a big price that day. He's come back 29 days later in Group 2 form, beaten Wicklow Brave, and I just want to show a couple of these replays. What I like about this horse is his turn of foot. So he's last here, he's not, he's second last on the inside, the Lloyd Williams colours. Wicklow Brave's outside the leader, so we've got quite a few interesting form lines. I know he's 60-1 Wicklow Brave, but he's got some decent form around him. He's off and gone here, and this, you can see this horse just stone cold held up, looks to come to the outside. It's hard enough to do this for sharp sprinting types, but staying middle distance horses, or we're getting up to 2,800 metres here. These sort of horses are really struggle to overcome these sort of obstacles, mainly pace, and so he's able to overcome a few hurdles, burst through a gap, really limited room, and really you can see he's only just warming through the line. A great sign, and a lot of hidden merit in that run for mine. He then came out following that and ran second to Order of St George. No real point watching the full replay here. He had his chance at this point. He chases a very good horse in Vain, but he is quite dominant over the rest of the runners behind. Make no doubt Order of St George would be a short price favourite if it was here and waited with any sort of comfortable weight. See the big margins opening up behind there. That was the St Ledger trial. Then came out in the St Ledger again. He's out the back here and upheld up So these are serious horses we're talking here. This is a Group 1 St Ledger. He never looks like really winning Rekindling, but you can see that he's sprinting with these horses and making ground against some serious horses. Here he is down the outside here, running in onto their heels. He's a serious animal. Whether he's 12 months away or not, we'll find out. But to me, he draws ideally. Corey Brown will suit this horse. He does look a bit of a sit and steer type that will take him a long way, and he'll only have to get into him late. I don't want him to be in a driving finish, but $15 looks great considering his form lines alone. I love the Order of St George form. I love the effort beating Wicklow Brave. His only real failure was this run at Group 1 level as a late 3-year-old. He's now run against the best in that Group 1 St Ledger, and his effort, really, really strong there. There's not much more that a horse brings to this race for mine. He's lightly raced, he's on the up. He's a definite player, and the more I look at him, the more I like him. Emily Star is a local. 2 lifetimes for this horse. Peter Moody's lifetime, when it just went from a maiden to a Group 3 in 4 runs and was as dominant in every race. Then came back. So obviously had 560 days off following that Group 3 win. Tragically, I think had tendon injuries. Came back and built into its preparation before winning a race at Morphettville Group 2 over a mile. Put in a great effort in the worst part of the track at Doomben, over 2,000 metres, then put away for the spring. Love horses that come through that carnival. Really seemed to thrive. Came back, built again into its preparation. Was a good thing beaten behind Hardham, I thought. Then another good thing beaten its next start behind Harlem when dragged right out of the race. Took care of our Mandan obviously this day, but did have a bit in her favour to do so. But what I like is the way she sort of just maintains that top effort when allowed to settle in her races. Last start we saw what happened to her, simply like she's ridden out of the gates like it's a 7 furlong race and used up. You can see here how much petrol he's had to use to cross these runners. So she's been gassed early and then grabs hold of her to try and get cover. They run fast tempo. She has the balls to charge into the race again. She's on the fence and she's right there to 150 to go. So that's 100 out. She's only 3 lengths off him. She has to stop considering the work she's done both at the start and to get into the race again, chasing a tearaway leader. She now goes to 3,200 metres for the first time in her life. I think she'll be put to sleep early. Gate 10, hopefully Yendall just gets across. I hope it's drawn directly inside of single gaze that she drags her across into a midfieldish position, maybe a little bit forward of midfield. She can be allowed to build the revs up there, 51 kilos on her back in Yendall. I think she's probably the best other local chance if we're calling our Mandan a local. The best other local chance, can't really call Rekindling or Hannes Vermeer a local, but they kind of are as well, locally owned. I think they're clearly the top 4 picks, $23 now, and maybe get a little bit better because people look at that last start as a failure, but definitely reasons why she failed there, and she can definitely improve. And Sis Montaigne down the bottom, he's just done a great job to get into the race, but does have a serious class risk about him. His form around, Big Duke, who shot the barman. These horses look to be a little bit tested here, and I think it's great for the owners that he's made his way into the race. He'll probably give him a nice sight because he does have some good speed, but I think he'll be found out at the end, and hopefully he'll put up a good brave sight, but not one that I can really see in the finish. I've provided some sheets as well that go along with this, and the only horse that I'm probably having a second look at is Humidor. I've got him marked $21 there, and probably bring him down a little bit. His efforts, and he deserves to be a little bit shorter, even though he doesn't tick the 3,200 metre box at this stage. I do think the clear horses to beat are Almandon, Rekindling, Johannes Vermeer if it runs the trip, and Amelie Star. Almandon ticks all the boxes, has to go on top for mine. $10.50 I think is the best price around. I can see at the moment, just looks great odds. If I'm going to have one bet, it's definitely it to go back to back, only because it ticks all the boxes. There are queries about the others. Obviously, Johannes Vermeer does have to run the trip. Rekindling hasn't had a run here, which is not ideal, but does look well and truly on the up. And it's just a matter of whether he's being seasoned for another campaign or whether this year is his year. May get a little bit better than the $15 around to find out. And Amelie Star at $23 looks the best of the locals for me. Two roughies that I'm looking to forgive and throw in are Ventura Storm and Wicklow Brave at about 40 to 1 and 70 to 1 respectively, and definitely expecting Marmello to run well as well, but I think $9 is short enough just for where it's going to get into the run, and it's just a little bit of a lack of turn of foot. It's just more of a grinding type that I think needs to be ridden positively early to get the best of him. So good luck, guys, and hopefully everyone finds a winner on one of the toughest days of the year on the punt, but obviously most enjoyable, and that's what it's all about. Thank you. G'day, guys. That time of year for a Melbourne Cup preview. Heading into tomorrow, cover the weather. The first looks like it's going to be okay. They've put a bit of water on the track the last couple of days, so obviously expecting no rain and hoping for a good 4 to hopefully upgrade to a good 3 during the day. I won't go through every runner's detailed form and videos because we'll be here for too long, but I'll go through the key chances. The horses that are coming from overseas, I'll try and cover most of them unless I really don't give them much hope, and give my thoughts on most runners. It looks a pretty interesting race this year, not too deep form-wise, so not looking too hard. Just my thoughts on the race are trying to find horses that are obviously going to run the distance and have a bit of a turn of foot, preferably. Horses that don't look like they're going to give away too big a start without a turn of foot, and trying to identify horses that are obviously in the best of form and ready to go. I do take on board things like not coming into this race without a local run and things like that. It's just much better to see how they're going and understand what they're capable of as much as anything. There's a few horses here that I've entertaining that are coming into the race pretty fresh, but most have had a run here, so we'll get stuck into it. Number 1, Hartnell. I'll go down the page, probably the easiest way to go. Sorry, just got an email at the same time. Hartnell, very difficult to work out the plan behind this horse, this preparation. It obviously resumed over the 1401 there, as usual. Went to the mile group 1 and was beaten by Humidor, who was pretty dominant late against it. Then came out in a bit of a controversial race over the 1800, ridden back, and Bonneval was too good for it there. Then last time it was a bit of a forgive run out to the 2,000 metres. This is sort of him back here. He looked to be travelling okay here, a $4.50 chance basically. Obviously, Johannes Vermeer is coming off his back and he's the most interesting runner.
And I'll welcome Cameron. How you going, mate?
Good, thank you, Dave.
That's good. Derby Day was okay. Hopefully more of the same on Tuesday.
Yeah, Derby Day was great, actually. I was really keen on 2 horses that the members would have hopefully all backed, in Scholes and Rich Charm. And Rich Charm's just a great sprinter. He rates really high and he tries his heart out and he loves the straight. And so seeing him charge down the middle was fantastic. Late yesterday afternoon. It was a really good day in the end. Yeah,
and a good result. What about, we'll get stuck into the Cup, but is it likely to be a betting race for you, or is it just another race?
The Cup itself?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a betting race, and I don't have anything clear. I have had things clear in the past. I was really keen on Protectionist the year he won, for example. But this looks an open Cup. So yeah, whilst it is the Cup, it sort of still is just another race. It's a lot more interesting than and a lot more people watch it and such. But I'll still bet it the same way. Bet my overlays and and things like that. And I'll certainly play the exotics as well. I don't play the exotics that much anymore, but on a race like this I will, because you can these days at Flemington you can get some bonus in the dividend for sure.
Okay. Depending on what size screen people are viewing this on and whether it's live or the replay, hopefully that column AO is visible. And we're going to start with your top raider, and that's number 22, Rekindling. You've got around about $6.40.
Yep, I do. I'll just my top 10. I'll just scroll down. You can see my top 10 here with price. Ignore that need column. That means nothing. This is so. That's my top 10. We'll go through each of those in order. I'll start with Rekindling, go Johannes Vermeer, and so on and so forth. But that's them in a nutshell. But I'll just go down to Rekindling now. I did this race earlier today, this afternoon, and there's a lot of overseas horses in the race, obviously, and Rekindling's one of them. Now, his form here, I download their form off the Timeform website, and I've got a method of converting their Timeform ratings into my ratings, which you can see here, and hopefully that's clear enough and visible. But I made this conversion several years ago now, and it works really well. They line up really well, converting their figures into mine, and so I now have all the overseas horses form in there, as I say, from Timeform. So all these runs here, whilst they're not rated by me, the Timeform ratings are pretty reliable and can convert very well, as I say, into my scale. So he has had not many starts. He only had 8 starts in his life, and you can see his ratings progressed up. That was his first prep here when he was doing 92, 96, 96 early on, and comments here which come from Timeform. They're saying he should stay, etc., etc. Then it went out for a spell and obviously improved quite a bit because it's only a 4-year-old. In England, it's actually a 3-year-old, 4-year-old by our dating. And then came back with 110s, had one bad run only, and then 112, 115, 117. I love this progression when you've got a lightly raced stayer, and I absolutely don't think you've seen the top of him as yet. I watched this replay earlier today, this race at Doncaster, and he was back. It was quite a solid pace, and he was back in the pack, and he was actually held up for a good part early in the straight, but then he did get out, and he kept coming nicely. It was a nice run. The winners were a couple of lengths in front of him, but he was only beaten about 2 lengths, and he really found the line solidly enough for me to say that's not necessarily his top. He doesn't have a brilliant turn of foot, but he'll definitely stay, and he does it. He's not one of the English, one pacer. I think he's 117 to 118. There can be more improvement. He's going to get the perfect map from barrier 4 for Brown. He was well back in that race, but there was only 10 or 12 in it, whatever it was, 11 runners. And he was well back in that race, but he can position up closer. Brown could go back or could settle midfield from the barrier. He gets his choice, and the long Flemington straight will suit. He's thrown him at 51.5 for mine, and I've improved him a little bit more up to 118. And for me, with the 51.5 kilos, that makes him the horse to beat in the race. And he's about 12 to 1 at the moment, so $13. I'll just have a look what he is here on another computer.
Well, why do you do that, Cameron? Do you often get a double overlay in the Cup, or especially with the top raider? You probably don't get a double overlay top raider that often. So you can get double overlays, but they're more the roughy, a roughy like say, Boom Time in the Caulfield Cup, that kind of thing, where it's not your top pick, but you think the market's got it wrong, and it might be 50s and you might be $15 or something like that. But yeah, no, it's a little bit. It's a bit more rare to get a double overlay top pick because your top picks, the market tends to get things pretty right. I just think they've underestimated this one a little bit. I do expect money to come for Rekindling. I won't be the only one who's found it, and there's no certainty or anything like that. I've got him $6.40. I think I have top pick, and so he's the leading chance, and at $13 best at the moment. Well, that's Bet365, so that's a myth. But $12 everywhere else. He's just a really good overlay in my opinion. Okay. They'll back other horses too. So, but I think money will come for him. How do you look at that preparation where he's basically had one start a month for quite some time?
Yeah, well, that's what they do, isn't it? Really, you're right. He's raced once every month there, hasn't he? But that's what they do, and he's had it'll be 52 days. It'll be, as it says over here, 52 days between his last run and now, but that ties in with what he's done in the past. I
think it's okay. We've never seen a horse, except for Vintage Croc, we've never seen a horse win the race without having had a run in Australia. But it's a bit of a myth, that as well, because lots of horses have run second and been very, very close. And it's only a matter of time till another one does it. And, I've got no problems with the 52 days. I've got him right, hopefully. And he's in a good stable. And hopefully, if he's right, and if he runs up to his 117 or so, he's with 51.5 kilos, he's going to be really hard to beat.
Okay, so rekindling on top. Sorry.
Yep, I do. So that's all right. So that's him. We'll go on to the second horse.
Yep.
My second pick, which is Johannes Vermeer, another overseas runner, but he's obviously had 2 runs here since. Now you can see where he's probably a good example of the ratings, lining up. In that, he progressed in his early runs overseas. He got up to 112 and got up to 115, 114 here and here, obviously, and then he came out here and he was really good, 116 first up. Excuse me. And he didn't get a great deal of luck here in the Caulfield Cup when he went 113. Now he's another lightly raced one. He's 5, so he'll be a 4-year-old by their age, by their dating. And I don't think necessarily we've seen the top of him either. When I see a horse on my ratings do this, where they have 113, 115, 114, 113, that means that's what Mark, or even back here, 112, 113, what Mark would call, Mark Reed, as they used to call a base. So they've got a real base around that mark. And so if a horse is doing a mark like that over and over again, it means that they're comfortable doing it. And if they're comfortable doing that, then it's not their top. They've got another level to come at some point. So if he does have another level to come, then it's going to be up around this 100, it's somewhere between 118 to 120. 120 would be absolutely the top of what you could say about him. So you watch his replays. I saw this run here, 116. He does first up, and it was not suited. It was a slightly slow pace, and Galo Chop got away with a very easy time in front, and he came from back and was by far and away the best closer in the race in that one to come second. And that said to me, okay, well, if he does 116 not suited, then yeah, there is 118, 119, 120 somewhere there in him on the day when everything goes right, when he gets things right. And then things didn't go right for him here in the Caulfield Cup. He wasn't beaten far. He arguably should have finished closer. It was a bit of a biased track that day, which helped our boy Boom Time win. But that was a good run with not much going right. And from a good gate 3, and Melbourne's now had a ride on him, he could go back, but he could push on and sit midfield from that gate if he wanted to. I have to push him up a bit higher because I think that, as I say, that there's more in store for him, especially on the back of that 116 he did. That was a 116, as I said, that wasn't suited, and therefore he's got something better in when he is suited. And so I'll push him up to 119. I think he's in well as well at 54.5, and I think he'll get the trip. He hasn't done it yet, obviously, but on a 2,000 metre run, he looked like he had no trouble with it, and he was still finding the line over 2,400 metres when not much went right. I certainly didn't want to pot him at the trip anyway, but because he hasn't done anything like 120 yet, it ended up at 119. It's the figure I gave him, and that it makes him the second pick, but pretty much the equal second pick with, if we go back to here, Humidor, who there's not much between those two, obviously, in second pick there. So we'll go on to Humidor if you like.
Yep.
Unless there's anything about Johannes Vermeer that they needed to know or anything.
Not at the moment, no, other than... there's a question from Elias who said, what about the big field? I actually think it's referring to rekindling. What about the big field with the top pick?
Yep.
Worst run was with 18 runners, all other starts, less runners.
Yeah, well, he has... Yeah, so they tend to have been against smaller fields over there a lot of the time. He's in a big field, but hopefully half of them are behind him, frankly. I mean, from barrier 4, Brown shouldn't go back too far. If he has gotten back in some, but he can posse up a bit closer too. And so hopefully he's only got 10 in front of him, right? And and the others all behind him. It's also the jockey's job to make sure they keep him out of trouble and things like that. So he was 4th out of 11, and he got a bit lost in that field there last day out of 11. And he had this one bad run, but I'm not going to blame that. It was a big field. I'm not going to say that was necessarily the reason he did it. I'm happy just to take that chance with him, basically.
Okay. So you're going to mention, or going to run through Humidor's form. You work heavily off ratings. How do you assess the likelihood of him being able to bring Cox Plate type rating, to repeat that next start, and particularly over 2 miles? Yeah,
well, that's the big question mark. And Humidor is a very, very good horse on his day, and unfortunately his day isn't every time he steps out.
Back here, he looked really good winning the Australia Cup when he did 116, and we really looked to have been getting him going here, and then this day, he might not have really handled that heavy 9 track up there. And then he came back pretty well, and then he flew this day. Looked like far lap this day when he won at Flemington Maccabi Diva 121, and he had more in the tank. And then he went back to bad humidor, doing his laying in and throwing his head around, all that kind of stuff, and not much sort of went right. A pretty bad ride in the Caulfield Cup from Lane. And then here, this was a great run. He had the drop on Winks there, and Winks had a harder run, but then he did find the line strongly and better than the others to get his 122, which is a really good figure. And if he does 122, he's probably going to, he'll win or be not beaten very far at all. But the question, as you say, is 3,200 metres. He's got. I think he's on his dam side. He's got there's a veal in there somewhere, and he's got sort of recommendations that he may be able to stay, but he might be best 2,000 metres too. He is a little bit of a question mark at the trip. I can't say he's definitely going to get it. A few days ago, I was a lot more keen on him getting the trip, but watching it again, I'm not 100% that he can get it. If he does, then if he can hold his 122, then well and good. But he can be inconsistent, as I said. Bad humidor turns up, he'll do 113, and he'll be down the track. I've done him the 120. I've given him the 120 in the end because of my question mark. So I'd start with if it was 2,000 metres, for example, tomorrow, I wouldn't obviously no distance query, and I'd be starting with 122, and then I might have been knocking a half point off because he can be a bit inconsistent. But with the extra trip being a question mark, that's why I bring him back to 120. In the end, what you have to do is assess probabilities, and the number is essentially becoming a probability. So what you're saying is if there's question marks, you've got to penalise them, and then it'll be expressed in the probability as to what their chance is. If, for example, I was to go and give him 122, he would be top pick? Now, yeah, so he'd now be the $5.20 top pick. So I guess what you can say is quantifying how much of a query is really about, for the difference between $5.20 and $9.90. And that's what, that's that 2 points. It takes me out from that $5.20 to $9.90 that I think is that question mark. But it still makes him third pick because he's a high rater and he's a strong horse and loves Flemington too.
Okay. Next up is Marmello for Huey Bowman.
Marmello, yep. Okay. Yep, Marmello. Now, great run in the Caulfield Cup. When he got back, now, as I've said before, that was a biased track. It was more advantageous to be near the rail that day where boom time was. And he got back well back in third. He was near the inside coming to the turn, but then he had to go out wider in order to get into clear air, and he didn't. He closed it out really well. It was, everybody noted at the time as well, it was one of those runs that people see and go, well, that's a great Melbourne Cup trial. It was. He only did 112, but he's got these solid ratings over there, 115, 113, 114, 116, and similar to Johannes Vermeer, he looks the type, he's only lightly raced and a 4-year-old by their dating, and he's a very similar kind of story in that he looks like he's got a higher mark coming, and just using my experience and watching that replay of the Caulfield Cup there, the ground he made up indicated he had more in the tank. Given he was on inferior ground anyway, it's better than 112 effectively. And so, I'm trying to push him forward, thinking, well, what could this horse do at his top? First thing I always try to do with every horse is work out what's the maximum I think this horse could possibly do. And so I have a feel for their ladder, their range. And the best he could do would be about that 119, 120, so similar again. And that like 120, for example, would be a 4-length improvement on his run there. Now, given he definitely had more in the tank over the 2,400 metres, and given he was on inferior ground, it's not silly to suggest he could go 4 lengths better, but he hasn't done it yet. But pushing forward, Bowman 16 is not ideal, but as I said, he needs to get out in the clear air, so at least he'll be able to get out in the middle of the Flemington track, and that won't be worst ground or anything like that. The rail's still in the true, and Flemington played really, really well the other day, and Derby Day played perfectly, and so there'll be no disadvantage being out there, and he'll be able to wind up out there. So as long as Bowman doesn't end up too wide during the run, then he can really warm up out there and run on. And ended up with him at 119, which makes him the 4th pick and priced $11. What's he currently in the market? I've got the market over
about $9.
Yeah, about $9 now. Yeah, so he's a little bit below, but things can change. We'll see what happens with the money. I'd like to be on. At this stage, I won't be, but yeah, he's certainly a strong chance anyway.
All right. Then we've got our Mandan, who's similar kind of price, $9 or $10, but you've got closer to $14, I think.
Yep, I've got him like 1360. He's last year's winner, of course. He did 120 here, winning the race last year. He was really good working through. There's another good. I mean, he's an older horse, but with the stayers, when you see him just constantly improving their ratings like that, it's a really positive sign. Came back really well, 113, and then this was one of those big flashing light runs that when he won this day that everybody saw. But at the end of the day, when he won that day, he never left. This was in Japan Racing Association Trophy at Flemington back on the 16th of September. Now, he never left the rail. They vacated the rail from him. He got these beautiful rails runs, and so it was actually for me a little bit. The win it looked better than it probably really was. It was a really good win, but he got the favours that day. He did 118, but then he did. He was a bit of a cat here when he did his 110 behind Emily Starr in the Bart Cummings. Now that was a worrying sign, and I've been sort of in my mind leading up to the race. I've been potting our man in a bit, thinking to myself, well, he's got the market thinks he's going better than he is possibly with the Japan Racing Association Trophy win, but at the same time he did 120 in the race last year, and history tells us that horses who run well in the Melbourne Cup tend to run well again when they get another chance. Not all of them, obviously, but Mackay Diva won 3. But there's been so many horses who have run well in multiple Melbourne Cups, and so I had to start with 120. I want to give him to be honest, I wanted to give him sort of maybe a little bit less and have him a bit further down, but I ended up with 119.5 just because of that history in Melbourne Cup factor. And he's got Frankie Dettori, who's yet to win one, but he's still a very good jockey. And end up with him there. But no, I won't be on. He's going to be around that $9 mark, and I've got him about 14. So whilst it wouldn't surprise if he did 120 and wins, it's I couldn't go at the price anyway.
Okay. We always get Luke Murrell's opinion around springtime because he definitely gives us a forthright and honest opinion. He was the owner of Protectionist and always has imports out here for the Cups. He wants to pot the you-know-what out of our man and said that he doesn't think it's going nearly as well as last year. The map's not great because he doesn't think it'll be that easy to make ground, and our man is likely to get back and thinks he'll be lucky to run in the first 5. So that's one person's opinion, but it's interesting that he wants to dead set take a set against it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, as I say, I initially had him down at 119 and gave him an extra half point, and between now and Tuesday, I probably might end up with him back at 119 again, which would make him out a bit further in price as well. And it's interesting comments that Luke shared. I agree, he doesn't seem to be going as well. I mean, he bolted in that run in the Japan Trophy, but as I said, that was one where it was a bit deceptive because he got his birthday that day. Still, he did 118. So,
how do you think the track will play overall, and especially for the Cup? Like, do you think they will be able to make ground?
Yeah. I hope so. I think it played perfectly on Derby Day, and they're leaving the rail in the same spot. So what is probably, which is the truth, what is most likely is that will eventually start to cut up because there's been a lot of horses going on that rail, and the better ground might end up being out a bit wider. And if that's the case, then they should be able to make ground. They made ground the other day, so I don't have any reason to think that they wouldn't necessarily be able to make ground all of a sudden Tuesday. I'm hoping at this stage, I've assumed that it's going to play fairly, but that the rail will probably be off later in the day. And I don't mind if the rail goes off. I hate biased tracks, but if you're going to have a bias, then you're better off having the rail bad than the rail good, because everybody can get off the rail, but not everybody can get onto the rail if the rail's the best ground. So if the rail chops out, then that's not the end of the world. They'll just drift out towards the middle of the track, and they still should all get their chance. So I've assumed it'll play fair. I'll be watching, the first couple of races very closely, and it's not just about watching where the winner comes from. It's watching if horses are making ground. Even if the winner leads all the way, it doesn't mean it's the leader's track. And if horses are making ground, if they're not making ground, I'll be watching early, but I'm assuming fair at this stage.
Okay, you've got Wall of Fire's form up there, and you've got basically the same as the market, around about $14.
Yeah, that's about right. He was a good run in that Herbert Power. He got back and made up very good ground and rated 114, which was the same as what he did the start before overseas.
Another one he hasn't had that many runs. They're not older tired ones they're bringing out here. These well, there was a couple of old tired ones which we won't be previewing, but most of them are fitting this bill of these being their 3-year-old or 4-year-old. Our 5-year-old, this guy, lightly raced on the upstairs, and he's no one, and he progressed in his figures here to 112, 111. This is starting to look a lot like a base when you then come back 108, 113, 110, then come back 114. You're looking at saying, oh, you might have 117 horse or 118 horse or something like that here. And when he does his 114 first up overseas, and then comes back and does 114 here, where he got home quite well with a good run, and another run of a horse that's going to get further and had more in the tank and all that kind of thing. And so for me, it was a natural thinking he might be 119 top, might be 118. There's question marks a little bit, obviously, because he hasn't done it yet, and I landed with 117. Williams 15's getting out a little bit wide, but he'll go back somewhere. Williams, well, hopefully he doesn't slaughter it. But yeah, whether I'll be on, he might drift. He might drift, and he might end up being a slide overload, which could end up on him. I like his run in the Caulfield Cup, so 117 felt like a fair mark.
Okay, got $1 million question come through. How do you convert your rating into a price?
Well, yeah, that's actually, we talked about this the other time as well. But why don't I give it just a little example in a new sheet? Say you had 5 horses, and after weight, after you've adjusted for their weight, I should say, these are their ratings: 107, 105, 104, 103, 102. Then you work out how far off top they are. So that guy's obviously 0 off top. The rest isn't that many points off top. And then I've got a model of sort of a sliding scale that then gives them a probability. It's similar to, well, it's different to the Don Scott method he used to use, but you get a 1 probability if you're the top pick, and everybody else gets a bit less than this. This might be sort of 0.65. 3 points off might be 0.5. It's a little bit different to that, but you'd end up with that, and then their price and the sum of that, they'd end up with a basic probability from that initial rating, and in the sum of the probabilities is 2.85 in this case, which is obviously too much. So to normalise it back to 100%, you end up with that as their final percentage chance, which, when converted to a price, is say $2.85 for that guy, down to, make that a bit more readable, down to $9.50 for the bottom line. Now, so basically you get assigned an initial probability here for how many points off top you are, and then that gets normalised to 100%. So that's the actual probability, and then that gets turned into a price like that. So it's all about coming up with this figure here. As I say, I've got a sliding scale table that works that out, but it's about doing that. If you did this, you could come up with your own. Basically, if you're doing your own markets, my table is not going to be any use to you, because you're going to be on a different scale, whether you're using lengths or kilos or whatever you're doing, or it might be some statistical points that you've got. But if you're doing ratings yourself, and if you're looking to come up with a method of general probability, then come up with a table like this, down to however many points off top they're going to be, and just start to, well, as I said, the first one is going to be 1.0. Everybody else is going to be that, right, divided by the figure up here. Now, then work with this figure. If you had it as 1.0, they're all going to get the same, but you don't want. The higher you go, then just keep mucking around with it on your own scale till you work out where it fits and what the best what the best feel is for it getting the right spread across your market, for example. So you'll end up with something like that, and depending on, it might be higher, you might be 1.8 or something, depending on what you're using. But do that and come up and come up with what feels right. It'll be a bit of trial and error until it feels right for you on your scale or whatever you're using to rate, basically.
That's a good answer, and it's a fairly complex area because you need the historic ratings to be spot on. Then you need to know what number to use as a predictive rating, and then you need to be able to turn all those ratings into a price for an upcoming race. So that's why you've been doing this for a decade, and is probably still learning every day.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not
That's right. It's not a doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of work to get the ratings right first of all. And if you don't have good ratings, my point of difference is, and the reason I can win is because the ratings are right. And if they're not right, then you're stuffed before you start. And so, yeah, as you said, once you've got that, that's only the first part of the battle is getting the ratings right. Once you've done that, you've still got to then, as you say, come up with the right number for them when you're predicting. If you're predicting the wrong numbers, you're still going to lose no matter how good your ratings are, and then turn that to a price, as you say. So there's a bit to it in the end of the day.
Fascinating for everyone, I reckon, because this is a look behind the scenes. What about Big Duke?
Yeah, he's next. Now, he's a bit of and I really didn't know what to do with Big Duke. And in the end, because if we look at him, he's a 6-year-old, and we've got him going pretty well. Through here, he was really going well last prep when he won, 5 out of 6 there, and he started to he got to his top 116, then hits 114, and then went out. He might have just been a bit over the top in that Sydney Cup. And then he comes back low, but then goes 114, 114. You're thinking, okay, there might be more yet, because he's only had a dozen odd starts, and he's hitting these 114s pretty regularly. And thinking, all right, there might be more in him yet. And he was well backed in this race here, the Moonee Valley Cup, when it went around $1.90, and which says to me the market is saying, yeah, you've got more in you. The market's improving you. But then he didn't really get his chance. He was a bit unlucky there, but I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, jury out a bit for mine. Has he got more in him? Because he's not going to win the race with 114. And is 116 his top? Has he got sort of a 119 in him or something like that? And so I'm really trying to work him out. I've heard rumours that we might not have wanted to run him in the race, but he has. He maps well. He mapped really well. Barrier 5 for Abdullah. He'll be on pace. And so you sort of my first thinking is, okay, 119 is a possibility, but it's probably not that likely. And so I didn't know where to. It's about finding the right mark. I settled with 116 and it felt about right in the end. But he could run last, Big Duke. He's if we didn't want to run him, then he might have been overruled by the owners. It might be the wrong choice, and he might not be quite as good at 3,200 as he is at 2,400. He might be 2,600 his best trip, perhaps. So yeah, I'm not really that keen to back him, but then again, if you got out at 40 to 1, it'd be worth a little something, because it's all about the price and what they might do. He's a hard one to mark, that's for sure. 116 has felt right in the end for where to get to him.
Okay. Next up is Red Cardinal.
Red Cardinal, yep, overseas runner. Has McAvoy from Barrier 24. When I was a much younger man, I backed Kieran McAvoy from Barrier 24 on Brew. That was a great day. So, a bit of deja vu all over again for him here with that. He's another one who's pretty lightly raced. He's a 6-year-old by our standards. And, he's another one who's progressed really well in his ratings, isn't he? Up to 114 there back, last year, and then comes back with a short winter prep, 111, 115, and then comes back with a little 112. And so you're thinking to yourself, all right, we probably haven't seen the top of this guy either. There might be a somewhere between 119 or something like that, maximum 120 off that 115. Because maybe 119, 120, but the absolute maximum, but it's a bit of a stretch. Barrier 24, although he has, a kilometre or so in order to get in, McAvoy, it's still Barrier 24, and Brew doesn't happen every time, where he gets in midfield one off after a few hundred metres like he did that day. I think, 120 would be absolute maximum. I end up pushing it to 117, but he hasn't obviously had a run. He hasn't actually raced much this year. He gets in there, but I've still got him priced $23. He's about that at the moment. He's about $21. I like his profile as a stayer. He's already won twice over 3,200 metres. I like this lightly raced, progressive type stayer more than the ones they've brought out in the past anyway.
Okay. Straight from the horse's mouth, and that's Luke Murrell, who's obviously involved with Red Cardinal. He said his best rating, best runs are all 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Doesn't mind it firm or heavy. Breeding-wise, he likes racing fresh. But Luke's a little bit dubious on being able to make up ground on Tuesday. So he said, but from the barrier, there really isn't an option. He'll have to be snagged, sent back to the fence, and then just pray they all stop in front. But it's not a testing track in that regard. So they may not be coming back. He'll run on, and it'll look a good run, but he just might get too far back. So I'm not sure if you're in total agreement that it'll be that tough to make ground, but that was straight from Luke.
I just love how it played yesterday at Derby Day. I thought it was perfect, and I just sort of hoped that it might be more of the same. He could be right, but I'm not going to. I would feel I was guessing if I was trying to predict a bias, given how well it played yesterday. And I can adjust my markets as I go if there is something going on.
Yep.
And as I say, what's the first couple of races? But at this stage, I'm just working on it being okay.
Okay. Next up is Emily's Star, who you've got around about $25. The market's a little bit shorter, about 18 to 20.
Yeah, I think it was backed a bit today. Actually, I think it was a bit longer earlier. I think it's been backed in a little bit. The market's been a bit more in love with her than I have been. She won the Bart Cummings here, which Almandon was in and went badly, and she looked great that day. She won by 2 and looked great, but she didn't rate all that great. She had 113, which is around about her top. Got 112 back here for Moody, 113, and then she went on to the Caulfield Cup, and yeah, she had to do a bit of work in that run in the Caulfield Cup, but then again, so did Boom Time, and she was probably a little bit disappointing there. I just can't give her much more. It is weird, and we have a habit of improving them, so I sort of said, all right, well, you're a 6-year-old, best case scenario would be you'd have 116 to 118 in you one day, 112, 111, 113 kind of thing, which you may eventually be able to get to, but that just felt very, very generous to me. And Lovey Engel as a rider is a gun, especially on the lowly weighted ones. But I just didn't want to give her much more. I thought she should have showed us if she was going to do something like that, she should have showed us a bit more in that Caulfield Cup run. And I think I've given her 114, which feels like plenty. If she wins, she goes 118 and wins. Well done to Weary yet again, but. I can't really have her. I mean, she's in my top 10, but she's 9th, and she's a little bit under the odds. It's $16, $18 for mine.
Okay, and then there's Ventura Storm, who on your early numbers is a marginal overlay.
Marginal overlay. He is a where am I? There he is. Yeah, marginal overlay. He was another one not really suited by that Caulfield Cup bias track yet again. He was a pretty good run here behind Winks, and he's another one. He got good figure back here. Hayes has had him now for a little while, and he was prior to that run in the Caulfield Cup. He was progressing up in his ratings nicely, I thought, and he found the line pretty well behind Winks. It looked. I'm willing to forgive horses about bad runs when there's a bias against them, as there was there for him. And he's got this 116 back here. I mean, I haven't given him any more than what he's already done, but I was willing to push him up to that. Barrier 6, he'll be closer to the pace for sure. For Boss, he should get a really good run. And I was willing to push him up to that 116, which made him, well, still only makes him 10 to pick, doesn't it? But 116's not going to win you many Melbourne Cups, but 54 kilos, and he's 40 to 1, best price at the moment. So he's one of those ones I mentioned before. He could end up a double overlay at 50 to 1 or so. And although he's 10th pick, he's worth a small bet at 40 or 50 to 1. It'd be sort of like Prince of Penzance. When he won 2 years ago, I had him priced 30s or $35 or something, and he's going around 100. So he was an overlay in a big field. But a lot of things had to go right for him to win the race. And what happened that day was, of course, that 2/3 of the field couldn't win because it was another heavy bias that day, bias track, and he had to be on pace on rail or near rail. And he was. And so coming into the straight, 2/3 to 3/4 of the field couldn't win. And so he's up there in the right spot with a few others, and he needed, A, that to happen, and B, a few others not to perform around him. And so it all fell into place. But that day he only rated, as it says, I've got him here, he only rated 115 winning that day, so it was a low rating cut because of those others failing. So for a horse like Ventura Storm to win, those kind of things have to fall into place for him. But he's worth, a small bet. If you go around 40 to 1, then he'd be worth a small bet.
All right, so just to recap, he got Rekindling on top. You reckon the ratings are really there, but can go to a new level, hopefully on the up. Yep. The map looks good. Hopefully
it doesn't go back too far. And hopefully he doesn't go back too far. But I am very keen on him. That's my top 10 there with my prices. And I think, I just think he's really good bet at 11 to 1 or so, $12 or so. And that is my main play on the race for sure.
Okay. It's still early days. You've got a fair bit more form to do before Tuesday. But are there any other horses you wanted to speak about?
Yeah, well, I've had a look at a couple of the other races. I've got several more to look at. Geez, there's a lot of bloody horses in too. There's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
But there's a couple I can certainly tip you into. There's another one at double figure odds in the last that I'll certainly be on in Xten, number 2, who assuming it runs, it ran yesterday, and I can get over the odds, and also one I'm a bit keen on in race 2, Invincibello. It looks a really good race for it too. So they'd be 2 if you're looking for a bet elsewhere. In that early race 2, that's still going to be monitoring the track obviously at that stage as well. But assuming the track plays fair, it looks quite a good bet as well. And yeah, so those 2 are the 2 I'd throw into at the moment.
Okay. We've got a couple of questions here, so we'll take those, and then if there's anyone else, we'll answer those and then wrap it up. Brett's asked if you had any suggestions for exotics for Tuesday.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a good race to bet exotics. What I would do, and I probably will do something like this, is I would, if you're betting first falls or trifectas or things like that, I would be keen rekindling in them and hoping that he keeps progressing. I would be taking him as a sort of a rover with several of these other ones. And if you were to take him I'd take him to win or run second. He seems like the type that if he does do his 117, 118, then he should win or run second. Otherwise, he might do nothing, So I'd take him to win or run second with, certainly my other 9 in my top 10 there. And if you want to throw any others in, I wouldn't talk you out of it because there's 24 in the race and there's others that, can still feature, especially in first falls and things. My full market will show, which is there, if you can see the prices there. Goes out beyond the top 10. But I'd be keen rekindling because I'm very keen to do a lot of my betting on this race around rekindling. I'll be backing him for the win, obviously, but I will play exotics in a way similar to that, and that would be my suggestion for sure.
Okay. The question from Simon is: do you give Max Dynamite any chance of winning?
Max, yeah, where did I have him? I've got him. Well, he's not far out of the top 10. I like Zach Curtin on him. And he's got some good figures back here, but he's a hard one to work out because he's been a little bit out of form and he's been over the jumps. He's had some jumps in there, but then back here where he ran, he ran second in the cup that day. He did 115. Now that's, as I said with Prince of Penzance before, 115 is okay, but it's probably not going to win the race unless, as I say, with Prince of Penzance, things fall into place for you. He's probably not going to win with 115, 116. I can't give him more than that as an 8-year-old. I can't say that he'll do more. But Zach, I really like Zach Curtin as a rider, and he's riding really well in Hong Kong. And barrier 2, I don't know where he'll settle, but hopefully, for their sake, not too far off. And he's certainly one I'd put in exotics. I'd be surprised if he won that.
Okay. So that wraps up what we wanted to cover, which was the Cup and just a couple of other races that you've mentioned. There might be 1 or 2 value runners. Craig has said, thanks so much for the winners so far for key bets. I also backed Boom Time in the Caulfield Cup on the back of your recommendation.
Fantastic. I really hope some people did. It really makes me pleased because I did try to push him in that preview I did for the Caulfield Cup and say that he was, he's a really nice over. I didn't have him top pick or anything, but it's just a really good example of value betting. And yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. I've had a little bit of feedback that a few others back in too, so I'm really pleased about that. It was a good day.
Excellent. All right, well that's it. Appreciate your time on a Sunday night, especially with 5 kids you're trying to keep under control.